G'day. I'm going to be talking about the TEDx attendee survey and the power that it gives your team. So every day around the world, local teams are creating incredible TEDx events for local communities. For your team to grow and develop the experience, you need to accurately know how the event is actually interpreted. At TED, we continue to work with organizers to continue exceeding community expectations. Only with feedback can we know how best to develop and continue to improve resources that can help your teams. To do this, we need a clear, common feedback language. An attendee survey has always been part of the TEDx license. For those of you who have experienced it previously, it was a very detailed Google form, providing very granular reviews. It had a very high translation requirement and a very low participation rate. Once collected, the results required focused manual analysis to understand. It was not scalable, and it was exhausting. More importantly, it provided no clear signal from your community to you on what you needed to improve in your next event. So in January, we launched a new streamlined email-based attendee survey. Available in 30 languages and counting, it presents a real solution to empowering your team. Once your event ends, you upload an attendee email list to the secure delighted system. The attendee is then sent a single email once with a simple question. How likely are you to recommend this TEDx event to a friend? In the email itself, they can then click a number from 0 to 10. Immediately, that answer is recorded. But for additional comments, they are taken to a website. This allows for a detailed, sort of prose-like response. Rather than asking dozens of questions, hoping to catch one useful piece of information or one useful data point, attendees mention only what was most important to them, what really sort of stuck in their teeth, what was really upsetting, or what was really fantastic about the event. By asking less of your community, you're going to learn more. This system draws out the most useful feedback, something actionable which can actually help identify event strengths and weaknesses. The collected scores are then processed using the Net Promoter Score method. This is a global standard. This score distributes your audience responses into 3 separate groups. Now, looking at this audience from TEDx Casablanca, we can find promoters, those who gave scores of 9 or 10 out of 10, your event's advocates, the champions, the ones who had just a fantastic experience. Here's an example response from a promoter. These are your biggest fans. The next group you have are the passives, those who gave a 7 or an 8. They provide very concrete feedback because even though they were impressed, something kept them from giving a 9 or a 10. For example, even though such a high score might lead to a recommendation to a friend, if it was a 7 or 8, they're probably going to include a disclaimer. The last category are detractors, those who were not impressed. They want to let someone know, and this is a way for them to do it. This, too, can hold useful, practical information to shape the next event. Now, when first reviewing your feedback, remember the result that you are given is not an average of these responses. It is the net result of subtracting the detractor responses from the promoters alone. This is a real example response to a recent event. Note that the number of responses is 671, and also the bar format, which I'll explain in detail in a little bit. Again, this is not an average of the responses. When you receive feedback from the system, it will look like this: a complete report with score, bar breakdown, and all of the comments posted. This can provide critical insight into your audience's experience. The survey puts powerful data into your team's hands. It has a high participation rate, identifies real issues, and gives you feedback that you can use. Now, while the feedback is most useful for your team, it helps our team at TED work out where to concentrate resources, mentorship, and education. To explain this, you need to understand the platform-wide results. So over the course of this year, we've received more than 100,000 attendee responses. That's not 100,000 surveys put out or 100,000 individual requests for information. 100,000 people responded, rating their event. Here's how the program overall is received. This is the cumulative Net Promoter Score over the last year. Now notice the bar breakdown. 70% gave events 9 or a 10. 10% gave 6 or below. Net promoters minus detractors comes to 60. The breakdown is important and reveals something quite amazing. 90%, over 90%, responded to a TEDx event with a 7 or above. For a non-profit, volunteer-driven platform that is celebrating ideas, this is pretty damn good. You're probably wondering now, if you've received results, where your event fits in. So I'll share a few other points. The average attendee survey score was 60. A score of 86 or above means that your event fell in the top 20% worldwide. Now, this survey helps us concentrate our efforts. We review comments and customize advice and resources for events whose attendee survey score places them in the lower 20% of the platform only. That is currently a score of under 40. As the program grows, we owe it to every single event and every idea-seeking attendee to keep reaching higher. However, please understand that this community response, this survey score, is just one piece of the puzzle. When we make licensing decisions, we consider everything: the talks, the audience experience beyond what's said in the response, digital material, and of course, the proposal for the event itself, and comparing it to what happened, and then the proposal for the next event. As explained, the feedback is most helpful to your team. The more events that participate in this, the better the impact of the survey across the platform. For all of you here, hard-earned trust for your existing events can diminish if other events in a region do not pursue the same caliber of talks or innovative engagement, no matter what their budget level. With this feedback, we can only see opportunity. Every event team has the capacity to grow and improve. Now, to give a real-life example of this, I'm very happy to introduce the organizer of TEDxCambridge, Dmitri Gunn, to show just how their event this year used this feedback. To give you a little bit of background, TEDxCambridge is a long-standing event in the United States Northeast. The team have consistently delivered creative audience and partner engagement visible to TED, while at the same time maintaining top-tier curation. Several TEDxCambridge talks have been featured on the front page of TED.com and several other distribution channels. So, now introducing Dmitri Gunn.
So thank you, Will and Jay, for this opportunity. It is a pleasure to be able to share our story with so many fabulous organizers, both new and existing. So the backstory on us is, this is my team. I'm only one person. There are 5 people who are not here, but I'm representing all of them. Small, very capable, highly motivated. Their team roles are perfectly, very well aligned towards their professional day jobs. Our first event was in April of 2009. We had 45 guests, and I'm excited to share with you here today. Our event next year will be for 2,600 guests. Between that delta of 45 and 2,600, we learned some painful lessons, and I'm going to share sort of what we learned over this past year. We host 2 events a year in the spring and the fall, 1 session, 6 speakers, 3 women, 3 men. So we embraced a lot of constraints, which has allowed us to sort of scale. In 2014, this was our venue in Kendall Square. The Broad Institute, world-renowned cancer research center, seats 250 people. The challenge we faced was, for those 2 events, we had 3,500 applications for 2,500 seats. The delta was very, very painful because so many people wanted to participate and could not. So we made the decision to sort of scale the event up to this venue, the Back Bay Event Center in Boston. It seats 1,200 guests. What happened, though, was that the way we ran the event from 250 did not linearly scale to 1,200 guests. And the perfect example here is our check-in process. We ran the same process that we did at the Broad Institute. It resulted in long lines, delays. We had a 2-hour guest bottleneck before the show began, and we actually had to start the show 15 minutes late. The woman with the flower bag probably at best was going to be a neutral, maybe even a detractor if you look at the look on her face. All kinds of organized chaos. Now, we were very much aware of this, and the feedback came back in the survey. One of the other issues we faced, this is one of our speakers from the spring event. She started with a dual ear mic, which I'm wearing right now, as well as Will. She ended the talk with a handheld mic because we had so many audio issues with that particular talk. That hurt. And that feedback came back loud and clear in the survey. This was our Net Promoter Score from the spring. It was difficult and at times very disheartening to read. Now, we were aware of a lot of challenges we faced hosting the spring event. Feedback confirmed what we'd already known. It was a good event, but there was a hell of a lot of room for improvement. What ended up happening, however, was this is where the good stuff is. Between 5 and 8, someone who had a good experience, but there was room for improvement. Someone who gave you a 0 or 1, they're probably never coming back again. If it's a 9 or a 10, they're bringing their family, their friends, their boss, their children. Everyone's coming to the event. When's the next one? The line's already started for that one. So what happened was, we're very open, we're a very data-driven team, we're very small, there's only 6 of us, shared that report with everybody. And so as the licensee and the executive director, it was less about me saying, hey, here's all these areas for improvement, or specifically operations director, hospitality, PR marketing, this is where you let us down or we let ourselves down. The beauty of this was it was tough for everybody to read that. Those first 2-3 days were very challenging, I'm not going to lie to you. But the interesting thing was that everyone rallied behind the specific functional elements that were expressed in the survey, particularly the constructive feedback, towards how they could improve their functional role moving forward. So first 2 or 3 days rocky, but beyond that, we rallied as a team, kind of renewed our faith in what we were trying to accomplish because we knew we had a better event in us. So how do we take that data and turn it towards improving the fall event? So here is direct quotes from our spring event. Now, all 3 of these people went to the same show. The interesting thing to note, so the red numbers are their actual Net Promoter Scores that they gave us. It's interesting to note that the person who gave us the 8 gave us the benefit of the doubt that we were probably aware that there were audio issues, where the person who gave us a 5 was, maybe they were the only one in the room to notice, may or may not come back. So we made some radical changes. First of all, we sat down with the venue and we had the entire stage crew replaced. Now that took an enormous amount of work and effort, but our team, in conjunction with that feedback, was sufficient for the venue to realize they had really dropped the ball and let us down. The other lesson we learned was, I cannot over-express this, is you have to have a qualified stage manager, and that person needs to be a member of your core team. Now, we have a fantastic audio-visual event production company. We had a new stage crew from the venue, but that in itself wasn't enough, and so the woman on your left that you see there, I decided to go find us the best damn stage manager in Boston. That woman is the stage manager for the Boston Lyric Opera. She got her master's in Juilliard in stage management, respected throughout not only New York and Boston. That was our field marshal. She protected every element of the show, the speakers. It was fantastic. We needed a core team member representing us behind stage. It wasn't enough to have the venue crew or our event production company filling that role. So a tactical, painful lesson that we learned, having her back there was fantastic. Other piece of feedback that we're going to share with you is the check-in process. You already saw the photo. You saw the look on the woman's face. You saw the flustered volunteers. It was a mob scene. We knew this one loud and clear, and probably about 40 to 45% of our feedback addressed this in some form during the spring event as far as what had shared. We came to the other realization that the team that we started with, as far as our volunteers, we're not going to be able to scale that. And so we essentially completely rebuilt the volunteer team. So we opened up a application. We had a great mailing list, a lot of very passionate people on Facebook. In 5 days, we received over 300 volunteer applications. We essentially reviewed each one of those, Skyped with a few folks, and then over the course of about a month, completely rebuilt the volunteer team. So instead of going from 10, we scaled up to 30. 6 weeks of training. We really wanted to focus as far as team building, enthusiasm, making sure that they felt empowered and a sense of sort of ownership, because for 99% of our guests, those volunteers are the face of TEDxCambridge. They will never see us because we're so busy or behind the scenes. We didn't do a good enough job in previous years because we kind of took it for granted things ran so smoothly. This was an entirely rebuilt team, surpassed our expectations, took total ownership, and one of the ways you can see that is, so spring, just to contrast the difference between the fall, there are no redundancies in this plan. If something goes wrong, everything backs up. This, after 50 hours of work, was what the fall event check-in experience looked like. A few things to take note. Anywhere there's a potential line, what we call as an expo, an expediter, answering questions, setting expectations, such that When they walked into the venue, there was a greeter. When they went to the check-in, they'd already spoken with that person. They got to the desk, there was another expo. If there were any issues, they headed to the service desk. Another rule of thumb we learned was maximum 100 guests or badges per volunteer. So we overbuilt it so there was redundancy and capacity to handle any trouble issues that popped up. And the realization that we knew, regardless of what we did, there was still going to be a line before the store opened. So we had essentially the 4 vehicles were a Tesla Model S. They debuted the Model X at our event. We had a BMW i3 and i8 and 20 state-of-the-art bicycles off to the left side, so that if you got into a long line, you could, like, hey, via the greeter, realize we're going to get through that pretty quickly. Why don't you go hang out with the cars, or why don't you go take a bicycle for a test ride? This worked much, much better. We over-engineered it by design. So what happened was, 5 o'clock, the doors open. There's a 2-hour exhibition before the show starts. There was still a line of almost 250 people before the doors even opened to get into the exhibition. Now, you see the greeter. She's answering questions. What happens is when people get into lines like this, no matter where they are in the event, that's where dissatisfaction ferments. That's where you start losing points. They're concerned, they're anxious, they're tremendously enthusiastic, they want to get in there. She's answering questions and even pulling people out of the line with the realization that go to the exhibition, have a little bit of fun, the line will dissipate. The other third component was obviously having experiences outside the venue for them to participate in, to take their mind off it, and via partnership with Tesla, the Model X blew people away because it's the first time they've ever seen that vehicle before. So 15 minutes after we opened the doors, that's what it looked like. All 200 people were checked into the venue. No further lines developed throughout the course of that. And the best part, not a single comment about the check-in process in our fall TEDx survey. So, well, thank you. It's a fantastic team. I'm just one person. So to contrast, we realized we had a good event, but there was a lot of room for work. That was the score. That's what happened in the fall. Team members were thrilled at this. Jay and I had a little bit of a gentleman's bet around whether or not we could head that in the right direction. I'm really excited to say we crushed that. And literally, we crushed that because the detractor face no longer has any room in there. So if there's one thing I can impart on you, particularly young or new teams, is share that feedback with your team. Don't hoard it. I will warn you, if it's a challenging event, you undergo some growing pains. It's a little disheartening, but what it allows them to do is them themselves kind of self-select, rally, renew their faith in the event, much rather than like a licensee or event organizer essentially dictating what needs to happen. So thank you very much for allowing us to share our story with you today. Thank you.